probe into alleged irregularities in implementation of the excise policy last month. With the CBI intensifying its probe, is the arrest of another Kejriwal minister imminent? Bureau Report, India Today.
Munish Pandey tracks the investigative agencies for us. He joins me live from Manish Sisodia's residence. Is Sisodia likely to be arrested? And the officials who you are speaking to in the CBI, what are they telling you about how strong the case against Sisodia really is? Are we seeing a political witch hunt, or does the CBI think they've unearthed the big scam? Munish.
Well, Rahul, as far as the allegations are concerned, interestingly, in the FIR, the CBI has claimed that there are two associates of Mr. Manish Sisodia who received money not only in form of cash but also in form of bank account transfer. In that case, there is a person called Amit Arora and the second person is Arjun Pandey. These two people, CBI is alleging that they are the close associate of Manish Sisodia, and they received 1 crore through bank account transfer and 2 to 4 crore rupees through cash amount. And this was given by those people who benefited from the excise policy. So CBI is claiming that the evidence in this case against Manish Sisodia are overwhelming, and there is a high possibility that he'll be arrested. But it's $1 million question that when he will be arrested. As of now, we have been given to understand is that after 12 hours of searches, the searches in the entire house, his private vehicles, official vehicles, everything is complete, but they are taking the data dump from his email ID. Now, it will take some time. We are expecting that after 1 hour, the raids will be completed and CBI officials will leave. But once they leave, they might summon Manish Sisodia, and later they will decide that when to arrest Mr. Sisodia in this case. But as far as CBI is concerned, they are saying that there is a very high possibility of Manish Sisodia getting arrested. Now, soon the Enforcement Directorate will also file an ECIR, that is a money laundering case against Manish Sisodia. And once ED registers a case, then Manish Sisodia will be probed under money laundering charges, and then they will also be within their power to arrest Mr. Sisodia in this case.
Okay. Munish, thank you for joining us with that update at the top of the show. There's also a furious political face-off that's raging over the CBI raids on Manish Sisodia, while the Delhi Chief Minister showcased a New York Times article hailing Delhi's education model. The BJP has called this paid news or an editorial, since the same article was also published in another foreign publication, the Khalij Times. While the war of words continues, the New York Times has told India Today that its report on Delhi's education system was impartial and based on on-ground reporting and is definitely not paid news.
CBI raids on Delhi Deputy Chief Minister has triggered a massive political quake in the national capital. First to come out in Manish Sisodia's defense was the Delhi Chief Minister himself.
खबर में मनीष सिसोदिया जी की फोटो छपी है.
Hailing his deputy as the best education minister of independent India, Arvind Kejriwal brandished the New York Times article hailing the Delhi model of governance.
मनीष सिसोदिया को भारत, दिल्ली का नहीं, देश का नहीं, दुनिया का सबसे अच्छा शिक्षा मंत्री घोषित किया गया एक तरह से. मनीष सिसोदिया जी दुनिया के सबसे अच्छे शिक्षा मंत्री हैं.
But the BJP was quick to counter AAP's claims, alleging that since a similar article also appeared in Khalij Times, this was nothing but a paid promotion.
न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स के फ्रंट पेज पे आने के लिए दुनिया के सभी देशों के प्रधानमंत्री, राष्ट्रपति मतलब बेचैन रहते हैं कि हमारा नाम, हमारी फोटो आनी चाहिए. वहां पे मनीष सिसोदिया जी की फोटो छपी है.
भारत के पैसे का मिसयूज करके एक खालिस्तानी ने आर्टिकल लिखा है, वो खालिस्तान समर्थक है, उसका राइटर देख लीजिए आप. तो वो खबर नहीं है, ये गुमराह कर रहा है लोगों को. पैसा देकर वहां पर आर्टिकल लगवाया केजरीवाल साहब ने.
Back-to-back press conferences, claims versus counter-claims over paid news. The war of words only escalated through the day.
जो 6 पिक्चर इसमें न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स में है, वही 6 पिक्चर खालिज टाइम्स में. ऐसा होता है क्या कि नव भारत टाइम्स और जो है दैनिक जागरण और पंजाब केसरी और सारे अखबारों में एक ही स्टोरी लगेगी और वर्ड टू वर्ड सेम लिखा जाएगा और एक ही पिक्चर होगी, तो उसको क्या मानेंगे? उसको तो ऐड ही मानेंगे.
न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स प्राइमरी अखबार है, उसी की खबर को, क्या नाम है इस अखबार का, खलीज टाइम्स, इसने छापा और बाकायदा लिखा हुआ है, उसमें तो छपा हुआ है, कर्टसी न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स उसने लिख दिया। जब एक अखबार से खबर बोरो करके दूसरे अखबार के अंदर छपी है तो वो खबर तो वैसी ही होगी ना।
सीएजी की रिपोर्ट ने अभी बताया है हाल ही में कि 4200% इंक्रीज हुआ है एडवर्टाइजिंग बजट में आम आदमी पार्टी का। इसीलिए लोग कहते हैं दिस नॉट आम आदमी पार्टी, ये एडवर्टाइजिंग एंटी आम आदमी पार्टी है।
मुझे लगता है जब प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी ने भी न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स का कल का अखबार पढ़ा होगा तो वो भी परेशान हुए होंगे, उनका भी मन मचला होगा, परेशान हुआ होगा, और इसीलिए शायद सीबीआई, इन्फोर्समेंट डायरेक्टरेट और न जाने कौन कौन सी एजेंसियां आज आम आदमी पार्टी के नेताओं पर छोड़ी जा रही हैं।
The BJP is now demanding Manish Sisodia's resignation, accusing him of money laundering. While the Aam Aadmi Party has called the raids vendetta, one thing is for certain, political fireworks will only get more explosive. Bureau Report, India Today.
Joining me for the big Newstrack showdown tonight, Shahzad Poonawalla, national spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party, squaring off against him, Reena Gupta of the AAP, Shantanu Sen is a former joint director of the CBI, and we have Bishan Kumar. We've called him because he's the editor-in-chief of Spirits. Spirits is a magazine that exclusively tracks the alcohol industry, and he follows liquor policies more closely than any of us does. So he's looked at the policies in the past, he's looked at what's happening currently, and will give us a sense of whether or not there is a real scam outside of what the BJP and the AAP are likely to say. Shahzad Poonawalla, since you did that big aggressive press conference on the issue of the paid article by the Aam Aadmi Party on the front page of the New York Times, that was your charge. The New York Times responds to that, saying that this is, according to them, a journalistic endeavor. This is not paid news, and the fact that the Khalij Times has carried this is nothing of great concern, because this is pretty standard. When a publication like the New York Times does an article, there are several newspapers the world over that carry what the New York Times does. This is through a proper arrangement. It's not as if it's some Khalistani conspiracy, which is what the BJP seems to be alleging. So let's start from there. Shahzad Poonawalla, welcome.
Thank you very much. ABCD is the manner of Aam Aadmi Party. A for advertising, B for blaming, C for cover-up of corruption, and D for deviation. And therefore, we've seen them use this fig leaf and trying to deviate from the real issue of the liquor scam, on which 15 questions have been posed and none have been answered. But having said so, let me answer this question at the forefront. First of all, I don't think this country or anybody here or people of Delhi need a certificate from New York Times, especially with their orientation, to give us or let us know about how...
No, that's a different matter. I'm only on the question of whether this is paid news or not, which is what the BJP alleged, where the New York Times is saying this is our article based on the ground reportage. This has got nothing to do with political or advertiser influence. This, according to them, for good or bad, is impartial on-ground reporting, and education is an issue that the NYT covers over many years.
Okay, Rahul, it will be a waste of time to use your show for this. But anyways, let me give you some more facts. On 16th of August, the similar article has been published in 3 very shady websites. Okay, one is called Local Public, the other is called Pakki Khabar, and the third is called News Next Desk. This is where it's been published. Then it gets surreptitiously carried by New York Times by an author whose political inclinations and views on Hindus and other things are well known. That's not the point here. The point is that we don't need the New York Times to tell us about how these schools are functioning, because 500 new schools had been promised. None have been delivered. If they can name those 300 schools or 400 schools they built, 700 schools have a principal missing. The NCPCR has issued a notice. The Delhi High Court has said about how there are no teachers, 40,000 teaching positions are vacant, guest teachers have not been filled, how there are 40,000 EWS seats which have not been filled. So this is the reality of Delhi schools. Just by spending money on advertising does not cut the bill. But today, why are they going on to this? They are going on to this because they have no answers to give on the liquor scam. They keep saying this is vendetta politics. Rahul, just bear with me for 30 more seconds. Here are 3 court orders against Satyendra Jain, whom they also declared as a Kattar Imandar. The lower court said there's prima facie sufficient evidence that there is money laundering done by Satyendra Jain. There's a High Court order of 2019 August which says that he did money laundering, and there's a 2022 High Court order where Satyendra Jain has been said to be a person of criminal background, and Mr. Kejriwal should decide whether he can be retained in the cabinet. Yet, for the last 2.5 months, Satyendra Jain gets no relief from courts. Obviously, the courts are not vindictive. And
Okay,
Mr. Kejriwal,
so we leave Satyendra Jain on the side for the time being and focus on this big liquor scam, or the so-called liquor scam, where the charges are that a waiver of 144.36 crores was given to a liquor cartel on a license fee tender. The LG says this would have resulted in kickbacks and commissions, which the CBI is now probing. It's been alleged that the cabinet was not kept in the loop. Sisodia was given authority and permission to tweak the policy. The LG flagged this issue as being wrong. Ultimately, the Aam Aadmi Party realized it was in trouble and therefore went back to the original policy. All of this taken together, while the CBI will need to go through this investigation, but prima facie seems to suggest that dal mein ya liquor mein kuch kala hai. Reena Gupta.
Rahul, this is nothing new. This vendetta politics of Bharatiya Janata Party has been going on against Aam Aadmi Party since the time we got elected, Rahul. You would remember they raided the Chief Minister's residence. They found 3-4 old mufflers. They have raided Mr. Manish Sisodia also in the past. Each time there is a raid. When they raided Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, they said, "बहुत बड़ा भ्रष्टाचार निकला है जी, सबको हम अंदर कर देंगे." What happened? Nothing happened. 150 cases against our MLAs. Most of those MLAs have been let go. All the cases have been dropped. In fact, the courts have come out very heavily against the Delhi police, saying that this is vendetta politics. So the point that I'm trying to make, Rahul, this is nothing new. Aam Aadmi Party, Mr. Kejriwal is becoming very popular all over the country, and Bharatiya Janata Party is rattled with our increasing graph. That is the reason.
No, but let's come to the specifics of this particular case. The fact is that revenue realization did not pan out. But ma'am, you're making a rhetorical point. I'm asking you a specific question. I must get you to answer the specific question. Revenue realizations did not pan out the way that you'd forecast. Revenue post your policy turned out to be much lesser than prior to this new policy coming in. Many liquor vends shut down. People didn't want the licenses, and you couldn't deliver the number of vends that you'd promised. And ultimately, you've gone back to the original scheme. If Kejriwal was convinced that his original scheme had merit, he would not have backtracked. You realize that you're on the defensive and therefore backpedaling on this.
I will respond to each of these, Rahul, but you have to allow me the courtesy of not interrupting in the middle.
Go on.
So, going to the number of liquor vends in Delhi. So one of the main issue with the old policy was that there were parts of Delhi, especially outer parts of Delhi, where there were no liquor vends. And these were the area where illicit liquor, spurious liquor was being sold in connivance of MCD, Bharatiya Janata Party. This was one of the main reasons why we decided to change the policy so that liquor vends could be distributed equally across the city of Delhi. Now what happened was that Bharatiya Janata Party, with the help of LG, added additional conditions. So just 48 hours before the policy was to be announced, they added additional conditions, clearances from MCD, clearances from various departments. As a result of that, only 400 shops could be opened, even though the policy had planned for 850 policies, which were there in the 850 shops, which were there in the old policy. So the revenue went down because a lot of the shops could not be opened. Now coming back to Bharatiya Janata Party, see Rahul, what they're doing in Gujarat, the same thing they're trying to do in Delhi. They want Delhi to become a dry state so that their leaders can get into this illegal spurious liquor business, which is what they're doing in Gujarat. Every day we see reports from Gujarat of illegal, of poisonous liquor. If there is Nasha Bandi in Gujarat, then why is this being allowed? Every second day there is a report of drugs being caught in Gujarat. Why there is no CBI raid? Why there is no ED raid? How is it possible that in the state of Gujarat, so much of alcohol, so much of drugs are being sold without the political patronage of Bharatiya Janata Party? So this is just vendetta politics against Aam Aadmi Party.
No, but you're making rhetorical points again. I have some very specific questions I want to put to you. The LG House is claiming that there are clauses which you put in the policy which prohibited bidding by entities which have manufacturing facilities directly or through related concerns. But the companies that were allocated licenses for 3 zones under the new policy had manufacturing capabilities of their own. One of the winning bidders is owned by the father of the owner of a blacklisted promoter. The third allegation is that promoters and shareholders of one of the companies were given a license but were blacklisted by the Madhya Pradesh government for evading excise duty. Yet the company was given a license in contravention of the new excise policy of 2021-2022. Reena Gupta.
Rahul, these are all allegations. These allegations, one can come out with any sorts of allegations. You know, this photograph you're showing, Dinesh Arora with Mr. Manish Sisodia, there are photographs of Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksey with the Prime Minister of the country. So, by virtue of photographs, can you say that Mr. Modi was involved with Mr. Nirav Modi? You can't say that, right?
Sure.
Now, let's go back to the earlier point about New York Times. Seriously, give me a break. Every journalist of this country will tell you that articles are published in collaboration by courtesy in several newspapers. A reputed newspaper like New York Times, I challenge Bharatiya Janata Party that with all their electoral bonds money, why don't they go ahead and get an article published in the New York Times if the New York Times can be so easily bought and sold? So these are all baseless, useless arguments. None of them will be proved, Rahul. And we have seen
the AAP's charge, Shehzad Poonawala, is that the BJP is not on the front page of the New York Times, and therefore you seem to have a problem with it. That you can't reconcile with the fact that Sisodia and Kejriwal are reflecting on the front page of the New York Times, that's your principal problem.
No, I'd rather be on the front page of India Today and of Aaj Tak rather than New York Times, whose credentials are pretty well known. And I don't, we are not dying to be on New York Times, which has this particular orientation. But let me give you, I don't want to get into this. I want to ask her specific questions, but let me give you one more example. This is Kejriwal's tweet on 11th of August. He's tweeted a website called News 24 India, which apparently was not originally a News 24 India website. It was a page of a supporter of a functionary of the Aam Aadmi Party saying that Britain में आम चुनावों में दिख रही है केजरीवाल मॉडल की झलक. There is no आम चुनाव happening in Britain. Even your former employee, Mr. Rifat Javed, has called this out as being as an attempt to push propaganda and fake news. So these people are the Pinocchios of Indian politics. Now let's end this issue here and get to the specifics, Rahul Kanwal, because your show is watched by millions, and I want to ask a few specific questions. Rahul, you know that the cabinet of Delhi government had disempowered Manish Sisodia from taking any decisions with regard to the excise policy. Despite that, you find Mr. Manish Sisodia take the following decisions. A, increase the operational period of the licenses from 1/4/2022 to 31/7/2022 in violation of the laws. Secondly, allowing blacklisted companies like Cow Gully to come into zones and trade there. Thirdly, there were show cause notices issued to manufacturing companies who came into retail, blacklisted companies who came into retail, and there was nothing done on these show cause notices from 2021. Fourthly, if the LG was doing some scam, why pray did they not say anything from that point of time till 2022 August, where they started speaking about this?
This is a good point. Reena Gupta, suddenly Kejriwal and gang turning around and blaming Anil Baijal, the last Lieutenant Governor. If Baijal was at fault and if Kejriwal is as honest as he claims to be, they should have been crying from the rooftop saying, "Hey, Baijal Beimaan hai, is forcing us to do something dishonest." You never said it till the charges started coming at your door.
So, Rahul, if you look at the correspondence between Mr. Manish Sisodia's office and Mr. Baijal's office, you will realize that the moment Mr. Baijal put in these conditions, Mr. Manish Sisodia objected, and Mr. Manish Sisodia said that if you put in these conditions, it will unduly benefit some of the vendors. So these conditions should not be put in at the last moment. So this is normal procedure, that if the LG does something, you send a letter, you write a letter. This is what was going on, and we were hoping that, you know, the LG will see reason and will take back those conditions, and those new vents will be allowed to open. Now also, Rahul, what the Bharatiya Janata Party did was that they were threatening private vendors, Rahul. They were threatening private vendors. All the vendors were surrendering their licenses. The vendors were surrendering their licenses. The officers were...
How do you know the BJP was threatening these vendors?
Because these vendors came and told us that they are being told. We asked them, why are you surrendering your licenses? They said we are being
vendors were telling
told
you.
that अगर
Which
आप
vendor told
license
you?
वापस नहीं
Which
करेंगे
vendor? Rahul,
तो
let's
आपके
ask them
ऊपर
the name of the
CBI की
vendors.
रेड होगी, आपके ऊपर ED की रेड होगी. So they were
Let's tell
trying to
them- let's
create
tell them
a
to
dry
put
state
which
kind of a
vendor.
situation. That is the reason we rolled back the policy and we said
Okay, no,
that
but I have
government will open liquor
Reena
vends.
Gupta, look here, the excise department is alleged to have deferred coercive action against the retail licensees after they defaulted in payment of license fee, interest and penalty for non-genuine reasons. Now, if those licensees are not being able to pay and action is sought to be taken, why did the Aam Aadmi government hold off against that action? Those are questions the LG is asking. It almost seems, as I read the charges, that someone there seemed to be wanting to protect this liquor lobby, and I really wonder why.
Nobody was trying to protect the liquor lobby, Rahul. This policy was a transparent policy, and you talk to any expert, they will tell you it was a transparent policy. We wanted the government to be out of the alcohol business, but because of interference, because of vendetta politics by the Bharatiya Janata Party, again we are back to square one, where no private vendor in Delhi wants to apply for a license, and the government will have to open shops. What is happening as a result of this, Rahul? All the revenue is being transferred to Uttar Pradesh and to Gurgaon because the people of Delhi are having to go to these places.
So just
to
hold
buy
that.
liquor.
I want to
This
go
is
across
exactly
to
what the
Shantanu
Bharatiya
Sen,
Janata
who's
Party
been
wanted.
with the CBI. And again, looking at some of these charges, it reminds me a bit of what happened during 2G, where charges were leveled, figures were given. In this case, the Chief Secretary's report mentions a purported loss of 144.36 crore rupees. But the reason for this said loss is that the department allowed a waiver of the tendered license fee on account of COVID pandemic, despite there being no provision for doing so. Now, this really, Shantanu Sen, comes down again to the idea of a notional loss. A notional loss is not a scam. If there's a pandemic and if revenue projections are not met with actual realization, once, forget what happens on TV and on social media, when this case reaches a court, the Aam Aadmi Party will turn around and say there was a pandemic, which is why revenue realizations didn't happen. How will the CBI be able to prove that Manish Sisodia benefited personally, which is also how someone like a Khani Modi and the others who are charged in 2G, like A. Raja, got away because the agencies couldn't prove that last mile that money went. It looked as if there was something fishy, but they failed to be able to clinch the case. Could this be a lot of smoke and mirrors that in the end doesn't amount to anything, or could it? Shantanu Sen, how do you see all of what we know in the public domain so far?
Rahul Kanwal, we are at the first stage,
sure,
the search, and you are jumping to the last stage, conviction. Just imagine why we are here, because the CBI was given a complaint on the 22nd of April by a competent authority, the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi.
Sure.
The Lieutenant Governor of Delhi is not merely a constitutional head, he has powers of his own, and especially on corruption, he enjoys full powers. The state government doesn't even have the anti-corruption agency under it. These powers are vested in him by the court and by the constitution. Now, he decided on a report from the Chief Secretary to ask the CBI to look into this. This was on the 22nd of April.
Correct.
And today is 28 days later. CBI has moved into action. That doesn't mean CBI was not taking any action for the last 28 days. As I know the CBI has a crime manual, and that emphasizes that full verification of the complaint received. Whoever may give the complaint, even if he is not the competent authority, and the CBI wants to look into it, CBI will exercise full diligence. Look into the complaint and see if there is a material under section 154 of the CRPC to register an FIR. CBI has taken 28 full days. And after that, CBI has located 15 persons who are persons of interest. CBI has found out their location, their addresses. CBI has looked into the various allegations made by the competent authority, here the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, and CBI has found, after looking into exhibits, documents and persons of interest, that this is a matter of investigation.
Sure.
Now, CBI has not indicted anybody. CBI has not charge sheeted anybody. CBI has not even prosecuted anybody. CBI has not even arrested anybody. CBI is merely exercising its duty to investigate on the basis of a
I hear what
complaint
you say,
given by a competent authority.
and you're absolutely right. In any case,
And let the investigation
agency should be
continue.
allowed to do its job, and nobody can jump in and prejudge what may happen at the level of conviction. But Shehzad Poonawalla,
Absolutely. And
we've
look,
been
let
down
me
this road
just say
earlier.
one thing.
This
CBI
idea
always
of a loss to the public exchequer of 144.36 crore rupees, which is what the BJP is throwing at AAP's face in every press conference, essentially comes from the idea that the excise department allows a waiver of the license fee because of the pandemic, despite there being no provision for doing so in the license document. Now, AAP can turn around and say, sir, we had a pandemic, we didn't realize the kind of revenue, and we've seen exactly this argument being made at a much bigger scale in 2G, which ultimately amounted to nothing. You have to prove that Manish Sisodia took money, or people acting on his behalf took money. Where is that final link, that clinching evidence? Shehzad Poonawalla.
Rahul, with all due respect, we are not talking about a presumptive loss here. I am talking to you about rules, laws, violation of all kinds of acts that are taking place at the behest of Mr. Manish Sisodia for a quid pro quo. Let me give you instance after instance. Please bear with me for just 30-40 seconds. I am telling you about how the cabinet had denied permission to Manish Sisodia. Despite that, a 50 rupee per crate discount was given to imported liquor in violation of the laws, which are basically the Delhi excise rules. Secondly, a 30 crore EMD, which was not meant to be refunded to the L1 of the airport zone because the L1 had to take the NOC. It was his responsibility. They even went to court. They did not
respond to all of these.
Please, Rahul. I request you, Rahul.
Let him speak.
Rahul, the 30 crore EMD under the Delhi excise rules, under Rule 4811, was supposed to be taken by the government. It was not supposed to be refunded to the L1 if it failed to get the required NOC, no matter what. They went to court. They still failed to get the NOC from the airport. And therefore, that 30 crore should have come to the government of Delhi. It was given to them. The 144 crore relaxation was also done. This is hard money going to the illegal beneficiaries. Thirdly, let me tell you about how blacklisted companies like Cow Gully were allowed to take 2 zones, which was in violation of the own show cause notices issued by the Delhi government. Fourthly, the manufacturing companies were not allowed to come in through this policy. They were allowed to come in. There's a show cause notice of their government also on that. Fifthly, they are saying that the vendors were threatened. I request the Aam Aadmi Party, if your money is where your mouth is, you make this claim on Rahul Kanwal's show, do a press conference tomorrow and tell us which vendors were the ones who were threatened by us. And if that was the case, then why was Mr. Sisodia saying that the policy was a great policy until last month? And one second, Rahul. Until last month, you remember when we debated this, Rahul, they were hailing this as the best policy. 1 second, Rahul. No, I'm giving facts. I beg of you, Rahul, please let me complete in 30 seconds. They were hailing this policy as the best policy. Then they do a U-turn and say, no, we're going back to the old policy because there's corruption in the new policy. And now they blame it on the LG. But if there was corruption, why were you hailing it till last month?
It's not just about that. Reena Gupta, I have data here which says that the sale of whiskey went up by about 59.5%, wine by about 87% in the capital, beer by 5.5% in the first quarter of 2022-23 in comparison to the quarter of 2019-20. But there is no increase in the revenue during the first quarter of this year versus what was seen in the years gone by. So if whiskey sale is going up, whiskey sale up 60%, wine sale up 87%, beer sale up 5.5%. But your revenue numbers are actually coming down. I can take you through the revenue numbers. The total revenue through excise. No, one second. Our viewers must. No, ma'am, I must take our viewers through this as well because people haven't tracked the minutiae of this case so closely. Revenue through excise was 6,309 in 2017-18, went up to 6,730, a rise of more than 400 crores in 18-19. Increased to 6,898 in 19-20, but after that has come down. 5,812 crores in the next year, November 21. Revenue dropped further to 5,741. So your revenue is going down, your sales are going up. That by itself seems to suggest there's something wrong with the policy.
Can I explain, Rahul? This is technical, so allow me the time to explain.
This is not technical, this is just very basic. Your revenue is going down, your sales are going up.
Can you listen, Rahul? It is technical because in the new policy, there are 2 parts of the revenue. One is the license fee and one is the the revenue that you accrue from the sales, the tax part of it. Now, because 850 shops were planned, but only 400 shops could be opened, so your license fee reduces to half. Even though the sale of alcohol would have gone up, but your license fee has reduced to half, that's why your revenue will go down. I hope that is clear now.
Of
now,
course.
coming back to the airport case,
net, was the policy better than the last policy? You made it out as if that the last policy was a mess and that your policy was better. In the end, we have more sale and less revenue. More alcohol is being bought, the government has less revenue. And you're trying to make it seem as if it's very technical.
Rahul, I think you've just made up your mind. You're not willing to listen.
I am listening to what you're saying.
The policy was better only if the policy would have been implemented in principle, the way it was planned, which was not allowed because of interference of LG, because of interference of Chief Secretary. Now coming to the airport license issue, again, a very specific, a very fact-based answer I'll give you. Rahul, in the case of the airport license, the Airport Authority of India said that after the license would be granted, whoever wins the highest bid will need to get security clearance from the Airport Authority of India. The highest bidder applied for clearance, did not manage to get clearance. The second highest bidder applied for clearance, got the clearance. He matched the fee of the L1. He matched the fee of the highest bidder. So the government approved his license because he matched. So there is no revenue loss, Rahul. I mean, these are just baseless arguments which Shehzad Poonawala loves to
Net, there is a revenue loss. 1 second. Net, there's a revenue loss to the state.
No, there is no revenue loss.
You're talking about the airport, which is a different matter. I'll come to the airport separately, but I want to go across to Bishan.
Now, let me answer.
One second. I want to go to Bishan Kumar because, you know, the point is most viewers who are watching this will hear Shehzad's claims, Reena's counter claims, and frankly be quite confused because they haven't seen the specifics and the story is just emerging. You've looked at this policy, you studied it closely. Why did it boomerang? Who is to blame? Is this political vendetta or are we seeing a big scam emerge?
Rahul, at the start, when they announced the first draft of the policy, the entire industry was very happy.
Okay.
They felt that quite a radical changes are going to happen in the policy and Delhi needed it. Because the AAP wanted to make Delhi an international city, and the old policy was a lot of problems. There was a lot of corruption when this corporation shops were being run by the government.
And those government takas were a mess. There's no doubt about it. Having
Absolutely.
good, clean shops is not a bad thing in principle. Why did it not work?
Yeah. So they also, it was very difficult to push your brands through corporations because they always demanded some money to keep your brands in different vents. So that was, people were sick of it. People were paying money through their noses to get their brands seen in all those shops. And they realized that this government is going to make drastic changes and bring out a new policy. They believe that things will improve. Also, consumers very happy that they will have a nicer experiences to buy liquors from the good stores. Swanky stores. And it happened, started showing results also. Where they missed the plot where because they could not scrutinize these people who applied for these different zones. They wanted to dismantle the cartel, but the cartel came back in different shapes and colors. People joined hands. And several companies have formed new companies, and there was other people who joined in, they pulled in money, and different set of cartel happened. A new kind of monopoly emerged in Delhi. First thing. Second thing happened that some people had more powers than others. Some L1 license holders were controlling, actually, till this one, controlling about 60 to 70% business of liquor because they have the majority of brands with them. So they were making more money than others. Number two, what happened regarding this loss of 144 crore rupees as a tender's license. This happened because, you know, the 67 wards for which the license were granted were in non-conforming zones. There were it was not at all possible to open the shops. But
why wasn't it possible to open shops?
Because they were not in the zone where the licenses could have issued. There have never been any events in those areas. There was not possible to have any clearances for MCD and other civic agencies from those areas.
So why were they trying to open shops there?
Because you know what happened when they came with this policy, and people felt that this policy will bring a lot of relief to them. There was a lot of short of time to put their money into it. And they went for a zone where these non-conforming events also happened to be. They put in money, said that baad mein dekh lenge jo hoga. Then realized that there was not a chance to open the shops as well. And when they started threatening to surrender their license, the government realized that कि अब कुछ करना चाहिए, give some relief to them, and they said, okay, let's waive off this license fee to them. So, but the government still has, government can still issue notices to these people to give that money. The money they still own, because they were under the license issued to them. These shops were owed by them, and they had to pay the money.
No, this idea, this is important. Let's build on this, Reena Gupta. The fact that there is no provision for money being returned. Why is Kejriwal being so daryadil with these liquor licensees that you're giving the money back when the license arrangement has no provision for money to be returned? The governor is alleging, the lieutenant governor is alleging that money should have been forfeited.
Rahul, I can read out hundreds of instances when during the COVID time, because these were very harsh circumstances, various governments, be it the Railway Board, be it the MCD, be it the Haryana Cabinet, waived off 2,000 crores in liquor license fee because of the COVID pandemic, because there was lockdown, because people could not realize their revenues. So why would you want to penalize these honest businessmen? There are several instances where all over the country, SDMC waived off license fee for all the advertising, outdoor advertising.
A lot of the problems here, Shehzad Poonawalla, that the lieutenant governor seems to have, as I read the case, is that mujhse pucha nahi. Competent authority without checking. A lot of this, okay, so pandemic happens, decisions have to be taken, multiple things are done by governments. The lieutenant governor seems to have the problem that Sisodia and Kejriwal didn't come back to check with the lieutenant governor, and it comes down to basically whether AAP is allowed to run Delhi the way that they want or not. This idea that it's a scam, or that part of the lieutenant governor's complaint is that they didn't come back to the authority, they returned the money, etc., etc. A lot of it is just like a simple control issue.
Rahul, you're far too intelligent to reduce this to a presumptive loss situation, or to reduce this to an ego battle between the LG and the CM. Let me give you some specifics. What the earlier speaker was speaking about, the master plan of Delhi does not allow liquor vends to be opened in non-conforming zones. Okay. Now, when this policy was brought and there was a provision to do this in the to violate the master plan, our leaders in the assembly got up and told Manish Sisodia, this is not on, this is illegal. Because you can't violate the master plan, nobody can. Please hear me out. Let's not interrupt each other. Secondly, this is not an ego battle of LG ko pucha nahi. There are provisions of law in the GNCTD Act, Tobro Act, Delhi Excise Act 2009 and Excise Rules 2010. For instance, Reena has just lied on your show. The Delhi Excise Rules of 2010, Rule 4811B, says that the licensee L1 of the airport zone, if he fails to get the NOC, it's his bad luck. He has to forfeit his EMD. No amount of daryadili that these people are honest businessmen can allow them to give this daryadili and give the 30 crores back to them. And they have daryadili for in the corona pandemic for these so-called liquor guys, mafias, but they were increasing the fees of children who go to these institutions. And Rahul, one last point. Please ask your person who's the expert on liquor policy. Manufacturing companies were not allowed into retail. Why were they allowed? Blacklisted companies were not allowed.
No, this is a big point. I just went through that. Now, Reena Gupta, this is a very crucial point. It's very clear that companies, if they manufacture alcohol, cannot sell alcohol directly. They can't have these liquor vends. And yet, companies which are in the manufacturing game are also given these licenses. That by itself is a very big violation and a contravention of that policy. Why weren't you more vigilant?
So, Rahul, I'm so glad that you had this, the Mr. Vishan Kumar on your show, who very categorically said that this was a good policy. The Aam Aadmi Party government wanted to clean up the mess, the corruption in the excise which was happening in Delhi. And the Bharatiya, the question one needs to ask is that why did the LG
No, you're not answering my question. I'm saying companies that have got licenses to sell liquor are also manufacturing that liquor. This is a clear violation of several terms and conditions in the tender document, and this is happening in multiple places. Some of the companies that were given the licenses happen to have blacklisted promoters.
That's right.
So, obviously, Rahul, if something like this is found out, this is a due diligence process which happens whenever, the companies submit their paperwork. Those licenses would have been cancelled.
But you didn't ask for action to be taken against these promoters, madam. You did not ask for action to be taken against these promoters.
You did not allow us to go ahead and do our due diligence. You just kept interfering. That is what you've been doing. You do not allow the elected government of Delhi to function, to work.
Rahul,
why did the LG first approve the policy? Then the LG at the last...
Ma'am, but you didn't take action against the companies. For example, there is this one company which was blacklisted by the Madhya Pradesh government. No, hear me. There's this one company blacklisted by the Madhya Pradesh government for evading excise duty, which is granted a license in contravention of the new excise policy 2021-2022. Why did that happen?
I don't know where you're reading from. I have to first see the documents that there were a blacklisted policy, a blacklisted company has been given a license. I don't know where you're reading from. I have to see the documents. I have to examine the documents.
No, I'm going through the charges that have been leveled.
No blacklisted company was given any licenses, Rahul. This is all a figment of imagination.
Shehzad wants to come in and counter that. Shehzad, go ahead.
This is just vendetta politics that they've been doing.
Shehzad.
Rate cases they've done, and
Rahul, let me come in.
Shehzad, go on.
Rahul, the day there is
Rahul, I request your channel.
Go on, Shehzad, go on.
Yes, Rahul, here is the notice issued by the Delhi Government Excise Department dated 25th of October 2021. It was issued to the blacklisted company and to the government that this should not, and action should have followed. They suppressed this, and at the same time there was a quid pro quo flowing from that company to Manish Sisodia through his cash collector. This is the show cause notice. I've shown it to my Reena Gupta and all Aam Aadmi Party spokespersons on multiple channels. Apart from that, Rahul, the liquor companies were not allowed to advertise. They were advertising dharalle se. No action was being taken by the government against those people advertising for liquor. It was as if like we were doing Har Ghar Nal Se Jal.
So I'll also show some paper now. This is a notice saying that Shehzad Poonawalla is involved in corruption. You can bring any photocopy to these TV programs.
Rahul, you seriously have to have a debate which is more mature.
Document, ये corruption में involved है. Why don't we talk about the corruption in Gujarat, Shehzad Poonawalla?
Okay, now Shantanu Sen, if you were an investigating officer on this case, I'd feel very bad for anybody, because you've got, the moment the raid is happening, ministers are doing live press conferences, then chief ministers are doing counters, the AAP is giving its defense, the BJP is leveling its charges. The agency is at the center of this political storm. Can the CBI be trusted to do a fair job, or will it do the bidding of its political masters?
CBI will do a fair job. You saw in Sushant Singh Rajput case, CBI was asked to investigate Riya Chakrabarti, and everybody was after CBI. Vikas Singh came out openly and said Riya Chakrabarti should be arrested. Did CBI arrest her? Did CBI file a charge sheet? CBI has not done it. So CBI is not bothered. In my time, of course, there was no social media, no print media, no electronic media to disturb me. And we believed in the confidentiality of investigation. And that is what the courts also asked us to do. Now, unfortunately, the courts don't frown upon breaking of the media silence. Why? Because the CBI sources are giving information which they should not do. CBI should not raid on a festival day. There are many things CBI is doing which we did not do in our times. But the investigation has to be fair and square, because otherwise the CBI officer doing the investigation will get it from our courts. You cannot
take Delhi's Keka's government-owned vents were a mess. They used to stink.
Investigation.
And the fact that you're trying to open it up, bring in private vendors, in principle sounds like a good idea, but that principle, unless it is matched with execution and reality, means nothing. And if there are blacklisted promoters who are getting licenses and they also in manufacturing and should not be selling but are selling directly, there are certain very critical charges here where the AAP and Sisodia are on a tricky wicket, but we don't want to take any sides. As Shantanu Sen himself said, let the investigation carry itself out. This is not a judge and jury mob court, right? You have to allow for the investigative agencies to do their job and determine whether they can prove financial culpability on the part of Sisodia. This idea of notional loss to the exchequer of 146 crores, I think it's bogus. You can just turn around and say there was a pandemic, our projections didn't match the ultimate realization, and therefore that's not necessarily a loss. You have to prove that Sisodia or people around him took money directly. You have to establish through financial trails. Till that is done, there's a lot of sound and fury. Can they find the financial linkages? I think that is critical. We'll track that. I want to thank our guests for joining us. I'm glad we could track different aspects of this and shed some light when there's been so much noise. When I come back on the other side of a quick break, showdown over Savarkar escalates in Karnataka. Bengaluru road sign painted over with Savarkar's name. Details coming up on the other side.
I'm the early bird who gets the news. The fresh morning air is my energizer. With me around, there are no dwindled dawns. Only bright, action-packed mornings. Rise and shine with me every single day, and you'll never hit that snooze button.
Good morning, India. Why wake up any other way when you can witness magic every single day? Watch First Up with me, Akshita Anandagopal, right here on India Today TV.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
You're on board the Newstrack. War continues over the Savarkar controversy in Karnataka. Today, in the state capital of Bengaluru, a road sign named after Tipu Sultan was painted over with Savarkar's name. This even as Congress leader Siddaramaiah continues to face public fury over his anti-Savarkar remarks.
Showdown over Savarkar escalates in Karnataka. From Bengaluru to vast parts of Chikmagaluru, demonstrations hailing Vinayak Damodar Das Savarkar, a Hindutva icon and revolutionary, is spreading like wildfire. In the state capital, his supporters painted a BBMP board naming a road after Veer Savarkar.
This is an official BBMP board. This cement block that you see is an official name tag of the BBMP. But what has happened is, seems like some miscreants have repainted the whole board as Veer Savarkar Road.
BJP MLAs are rallying behind the Savarkar protest. Party MLA Renukacharya joined a Savarkar book distribution campaign in the Vidhan Sauda, the state assembly. In Brahmagiri, Udupi, Hindu groups put on hold their campaign for a day ahead of Janmashtami celebrations and pulled down Savarkar flexes. BJP workers continue to target leader of opposition Siddaramaiah, who has come out criticizing Savarkar and hailing Tipu Sultan, the 18th century ruler of Mysuru. After Kodagu and Hassan, Hindu groups heckled the former CM in Sringeri. They shouted, "Go back Siddaramaiah" slogans. The police have detained the activists in Sringeri.
ಇವರು ಗಾಂಧಿನೇ ಹೊಡೆದಾಕಿದವರು ನನ್ ಬಿಡ್ತಾರ ಗಾಂಧಿನೇ ಕೊಂದಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ರಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ ಆ ಗೋಡ್ಸೆ ಅಂತ ಒಬ್ಬ ಗುಂಡಿಟ್ಟು ಕೊಂದು ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ ಗಾಂಧಿನ ಅವನ್ ಫೋಟೋ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಪೂಜೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
Earlier, Siddaramaiah's vehicle was blocked in Hassan, where he faced the flak from Bajrang Dal workers. The protesters threw eggs at the vehicle of the former chief minister. With protests over Savarkar's contribution to freedom struggle escalating day by day, the revolutionary has become a big political issue in the state that goes to polls next year. With Nagarjun Dwarkanath, Bureau Report, India Today.
This is where I wrap up the Newstrack tonight. Here's wishing all our viewers a very happy Janmashtami. I hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday evening at 8 p.m. Till then, from all of us here, goodbye, good night.
Amid the escalating tensions between China and Taiwan, China is leaving no stones unturned to show off its military powers, this time with its mighty dragon or Chengdu J-20. It is a twin-jet all-weather stealth that was developed by China's Chengdu Aerospace. J-20 is designed as an air superiority fighter with precision strike capability. More than 50 of these jets are in service since it was developed in 2011. J-20 can carry one pilot as its crew. It has a length of 21.2 meters and wingspan is 13.01 meters. Its height is 4.69 meters, wing area measures 73 per meter square and its weight is 17,000 kilograms. The twin jet can catch the speed of 2 Mach. Its range is 5,500 kilometers and it can combat up to 2,000 kilometers. China is proud of its Chengdu J-20. This aircraft will be showcased in China's new film Born to Fly, made for People Liberation Army. The movie will showcase the modernized aircraft of the PLA.
Make your media plans smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.